I felt complete bliss. I felt infinite joy and happiness and this overwhelming sense of light kind of pouring out of my chest. It felt like I was free. It felt like my body was weightless and just beautiful, like cold sensation of my body being free.
Thank you, Chase, for being here today. So you had a near-death experience following in a successful knee surgery, if I remember correctly, while you were in the Air Force. So would you like to tell us a little bit about it?
Absolutely, yeah. So I left for the Air Force when I was 17 years old. I was going to be a lifelong military person. That was really my career, was going to be, 20 years at minimum in the military. I was going to run off and try to save the world. And after a really insignificant knee injury, I found myself having to really kind of refigure out my career. In the military, usually if you have an injury that you can't overcome very quickly, normally they either change your job or they get you out of the military. You can get out of the military for really minor things like asthma, sleepwalking, flat feet. There's all these different reasons to either not join the military or to get kicked out of the military. So my knee injury was enough for that to happen. And I felt kind of like for the first time really in my life, my world was crashing down. All of my hopes, all of my dreams were, going to be taken away from me. And I really started to sink down and take life really seriously. And I would use the word of depression, I guess, is the best way to describe it. Was I just felt lost and hopeless. And one morning I was late for work and my supervisor had a key to my dorm room because I was still living on base in Virginia here in the United States. And she found me unconscious. She thought I was just going to be late for work. And there I was laying on the floor. They transported me over to the military base, the Air Force base there, and sent me to the hospital, hooked me up to every type of equipment you could imagine, tested my blood. They didn't know. I was 19 years old, so of course they're going to check if you're drinking the night before, if there was drugs, anything like that. And of course I took really good care of myself at the time and was a pretty healthy person, I guess, in that regard. And they couldn't figure out what was going on. They couldn't figure out why I was unconscious. They thought maybe it was just a fainting spell. Maybe I just got up too quick. But of course they were worried maybe when I fell, I hit my head. So they wanted to check if there was blood in my spine, all these different tests. Everything was coming back fine. Everything was coming back okay. And they were a little confused. So they said, we'll do one more test. We'll do a chest x-ray. And then if that comes back fine, we're just going to send you home and just say, who knows what happened, but it's fine. And so the nurse kind of fumbled with the IV that I had in my arm. And as she walked away, that's where everything changed for me. The alarm started to go off. My eyesight started to get really hazy and blurry, and the room felt like it was shrinking. And you started to see the nurses and doctors sprint into the room. And I started to realize pretty quickly that this wasn't good. That this isn't normal. And I started to get a little bit worried, of course. And as they come in and they're looking over my body while I'm laying in this hospital bed, the monitor is over here to my left. If you're listening and not watching, it's over to my left side of my head. And as I'm kind of experiencing all this chaos, somebody sits down to the left of me in my hospital room. And they start stroking my left arm really calmly. And I can feel them, kind of petting my arm. And I was really confused because I could so calmly feel this presence to the left of me while everybody else is yelling and screaming and, and using all these medical terms like something out of a TV show. And they said so calmly, this gentleman to the left of me said, everything is going to be okay. Don't worry, but you're going to feel pain coming up your arm. There's air traveling up your arm and it's going to stop your heart. And I remember feeling really relaxed that this person was stroking my arm, but I wanted to see who it was. Was it a doctor? Was it a nurse? Was it somebody I knew from the base? And when I tried to turn my head over to the left, I was unable to. It was almost like somebody was preventing me or stopping me from looking to my left. And so you're watching while this is happening. The doctors and the nurses look over you and they're looking at the monitor and they're doing their thing. And I started to feel that pain that the gentleman mentioned. And the pain was horrible. It was really, really painful. It felt like something way too big traveling in something way too small. And it was this air pocket that entered in through the IV that was traveling up my left arm. And it was, like I said, it was horrible. It was really painful. And every time I share my story, I can feel that pain and my left arm kind of goes numb from it. My right leg kind of kicked up in the air almost as a reflection or a reaction to the pain. And before I knew it, the air was getting to my heart. And I looked over one more time to my left to see who was stroking my arm. And when I looked over, there's nobody there. It was just the curtain of the hospital room. And there was really no way for somebody to really fit to my left. And, but what I did see was when I looked over to my left, I could see the hospital monitor and I watched it go completely flat. And I was no medical expert back then, but I knew exactly what a monitor, that flat line looks like, from watching movies. And that was it. I died. And I remember one last time seeing the faces on the nurses and the doctors of me dying. And that was something that I think was pretty traumatizing, of course, to think of even now. And I always say, I wish I could find those doctors and nurses and let them know I'm fine and let them know that everything worked out and I'm not upset at them. And, but, I remember the shock and the sadness and the fear on their face that they just watched this young 19-year-old airman die. But at that time, I felt complete bliss. I felt infinite joy and happiness and this overwhelming sense of light kind of pouring out of my chest. It felt like I was free. It felt like my body was weightless. And it just, the best way to describe it was it felt like, on a hot summer day when you have really cold ice water that cools down your body, that's how it felt for me, was this like freeing, just beautiful, like cold sensation of my body being free. And my body got to travel up. And I don't know if it was a tunnel, but it was certainly bright light and it was beautiful. And I felt like things were swarming me and surrounding me. And it kind of felt like laughter and like little chime bells and certainly not probably what I would have expected had you asked me the night before if I died, what would you do? Where would you go? I would probably say, I don't know. I would go hang out with some celebrities and eat some cookies and I don't know. I didn't have any sort of preset notion of what afterlife was. I think it's probably a good thing because in the military to constantly think about death is not a good idea. So I just never thought about heaven. I didn't think about hell. I didn't think about the afterlife, what happened after I died, if I was deserving of heaven. I just never thought about these things. So to experience this beautiful feeling was amazing for me. And before I knew it, I landed, and I remember landing because my feet were in dirt. And, in a dream, you don't normally feel things. You remember things and you experience things. But normally when you feel something, it's when you wake up. If you feel like you're falling and you hit something, it startles you awake. But I felt my feet in dirt, and it was so memorable because I don't like being barefoot. Here in Florida, if you're barefoot, you get bit by fire ants or lizards, and so you just avoid walking around barefoot. And so I remember thinking like, oh, my feet are in dirt. Where am I? And I could see this beautiful garden. It was almost like a forest, but there was just so many flowers around that it felt more like a garden than a forest to me, but it was infinite. It just kept going and it looked like it never ended, almost like a giant hiking trail, which I know, Dani, you like to do. So there was greens and purples and blues and reds, and it was so beautiful and vibrant. And I just remember feeling so peaceful. And way up ahead of me, we're talking like just out of my vision, I could see a gentleman and it looked like a little child. And before I could really concentrate on, let me walk over there and see who it is, my body just was, it was right there next to them, just a few feet away from them. And all of a sudden I saw really close up, it was this young gentleman, maybe in his 30s, with short, brown, curly hair and piercing green eyes and this beautiful white robe. And he had this like booming, calming kind of feeling about him. And this little boy was just this little blonde boy, probably 3 or 4 years old, with curly hair. And the little boy was kind of running away from him. And just they were almost like playing like you would play at a playground with your kids. You know, he was running away and felt like he was looking back, like he was being chased, and thought he was getting further away than he really was. And I would remember just sitting there watching this like beautiful, almost like father-son relationship. And I was smiling from ear to ear, and I felt happy, and I was watching this little boy just have the time of his life. And before I could even really, take in what was happening, I remember the gentleman turned to me, and I immediately knew it was Jesus. Like right away, complete certainty and no doubt about it that it was Jesus. But what was interesting for me was I grew up Catholic. And in the Catholic Church, when you walk into church, you normally see Jesus suffering on the cross. That's, you see it everywhere at church, is this usually really skinny, frail man who's been, in all accounts, as having the worst day of his human life, right? Is hung to a cross, long hair, and it didn't look anything like him, but I was so certain that I was standing face to face with Jesus. And it really took me back. I was shocked, surprised, delighted, but it didn't feel like I was meeting a stranger. It felt like I had met him before, that him and I were really familiar with each other. And so I stared, and I was like, oh my gosh, Jesus is right here in front of me. And I looked down at the little boy, and I immediately realized that I'm looking at myself. That back when I was like 3 years old, I had blonde hair, and now of course it's dark brown. And as I've gotten older, my hair color has changed. But I realized, oh my gosh, like I'm watching myself as a little boy, and the lesson became really clear. Of at that time in my life in the Air Force, I was taking life so seriously, and I was so focused on all the wrong stuff. What does my career look like? How much money am I going to make? Where am I going to live? I didn't want to move back home with my family, because I was going to be embarrassed after saying, "Oh, I'm going to go join the military and I'll see you all in 20 years." I realized very quickly that this was what my experience on Earth is supposed to be. Is what this little boy myself was experiencing, is this pure happiness and joy, and feeling like that there's no care in the world, there's no stress in the world. And Jesus and I got to sit there and have this incredible conversation where we didn't speak. We didn't speak English, for example. We weren't communicating in words, but we were just standing across from each other. And I felt like we were just having this beautiful connection. And he said something that always stands out, and it's, to me, the most important thing. He said, you've got to go back now. And I said, okay, all right, fine. And it was like, it was already agreed upon. I already knew I was going back. There was no negotiation of, can I stay? It was like I was just up there on a short little vacation. And he said, when you go back, make sure that you spread light, love, joy, and laughter. And I remember the laughter part. The laughter part to me was so important, because is there anything better than laughter? I mean, when you get to make somebody laugh, or you have a good laugh, it's such a good feeling, and it's a genuine emotion. And so oftentimes it's not forced as an emotion. So I remember going, laughter, okay, like I could do that. And before I knew it, I didn't really get to say goodbye. I didn't get to shake his hand or give him a hug. It was just like, okay, I'm going back now. And that was it. I woke right back up in my body, and I opened up my eyes slowly, like you would from this incredible dream, right? And whenever you have a really great dream, you close your eyes again and hope that, you could go for one more minute. Just give me one more minute. And I realized very quickly, like, I wasn't dreaming. This was incredibly real. And then I realized really quickly, once I opened up my eyes, I had no more equipment connected to me. And I was no longer on the military base. That people walking by, there's a window to my right. I was in this room all by myself. It was kind of a dimly lit hospital room. but nobody was walking by in military uniforms, which on base, at least every other either nurse or doctor is wearing at the time camouflage. For us, we would call it a BDU, which will age me if anybody in the military is watching, because we haven't called it that in quite a while. And I realized I wasn't on base anymore. They had sent me off base to pronounce me dead. So that was April 1st, 2008. And when I woke up, it was April 2nd. I wish I could go back and find out how long I was actually dead for. Was it an hour, 2 hours, 30 minutes? I genuinely don't know, because my military record was deleted. They deleted some of those occurrences, some of those pages, which makes me sound like a conspiracy theorist. But I was always really worried about sharing this amazing story that I had and not having any proof. I myself grew up a skeptic of everything, and I think it's healthy to be a little skeptical. So I said, well, I can't share my story without a little bit of proof. But luckily, I went back to the Air Force hospital days later, because I had so much pain in my left arm from that air bubble traveling up my arm, that my left arm was just so bruised, almost where it was hardened, almost like a sheet of plastic or fabric, and my arm was black and blue bruised. So I went back to the hospital to be seen, like, is this going to get any better? What's going to happen? They've hooked me up to a ton of different heart monitors for weeks that I had to wear. I had to sleep with it, take showers with it, the whole thing. And luckily, that information is still in my medical record. So I'm really grateful that there is proof for me, to feel comfortable sharing my story. But my life changed dramatically. I would say there's endless amounts of after effects that even 12 years now, we're over 12 years ago, what's changed for me, since my near-death experience. I mean, we talk about a lot of the funny stuff that people with near-death experiences come back with, like, I break electronics constantly. It's not just, I think, in my head, because it drives my wife crazy. She was like, don't hold the remote, don't touch my phone, because she knows that things, funky kind of things happen. My body temperature is always significantly lower than the average now. And so I joke that I'm like a zombie, which my wife hates that joke too. But there's just been incredible gifts that I've been given, or I would say were, maybe they were always in me since I was little, but have been significantly advanced. So when I woke up from my near-death experience and I realized that I had died and met Jesus, I didn't know if I should tell anybody, because I thought if somebody came and told me that story, I might think they were making it up, or they're crazy, or they needed some mental health help. I really think I probably would have been pretty judgmental too. So I told my friends, I told my family. I even posted on Facebook back in 2008, the day I basically died, and I have a picture of me with my hospital band on, and so I shared it at first, and then I started to get really embarrassed by it. I started to think, nobody's going to believe me. Why would they believe me? Am I religious enough to have met Jesus? And are people going to judge me for that? Whether they're Christian or not, are they going to say, why does this guy, this goofy kid Chase, why does he get to meet Jesus? What makes him so special? So I stopped sharing it. I would share it with really close friends that I would make along the way. And I always felt like I had better insight to things than other people, premonitions, if you will, or gifts that would tell me what the reality was or not, or if somebody was suffering. But I really pushed those aside. I always say it's kind of like when you're a little kid and you have a beach ball. If you're in the pool or in the ocean and you try to see how strong you are, and you push the beach ball down and you try your best to hold it underwater as long as you can, and eventually you let go. And when you let go, the beach ball goes flying up in the air. And that's what I was trying to do. It was inevitable for me to let go and allow for my story to be heard. But I really tried to hold it down as long as possible, because one, I didn't want to get out of the military, which I ultimately ended up getting medically retired from the Air Force. Really just about 2-3 months after my near-death experience. But it was profound. So I kept it to myself, and I still took the lessons though of what I heard from Jesus, and I went out and I tried to do really go backwards in my life and do all the things that I regretted not doing growing up. Anything that I thought was interesting, um, without fear of judgment. I thought ballroom dancing was so cool growing up. You know, my grandma and I would watch the ballroom dancing TV shows. And so I took up ballroom dancing and I became a certified instructor, which if you ask anybody, they're like, how did Chase become a professional, instructor? But I got the certification and that was it. I stopped. And then I thought breakdancing was interesting and I thought it would be cool to learn. So I joined a breakdancing club. I thought photography was really interesting. And so I learned how to be a photographer and I got to shoot weddings for a couple of couples and then I stopped. Um, I took up stand-up comedy and I took a comedy course and went every Saturday morning and I got to headline a show and that was incredible. And then I stopped. So I kept going and taking these lessons that I learned from my near-death experience of going backwards and saying like, just enjoy life. Don't worry about the money. The money will come. The pressure of like, oh, I need to have a nice house and a nice car. It just became irrelevant to me. It became more important for me to feel fulfilled and then just trust that everything else would kind of fall into place. The things that are necessities, right? Like we all still need to have money. Unfortunately, we have to pay for food and housing. But I just trusted that if I was doing things that made me genuinely happy, that the rest of my life would work out. And it became really nice, to just enjoy life and wake up every day and have 20 different hobbies. But unfortunately, life, hit me on the head, and I felt like at a certain point, okay, I've had enough fun. I took a job with Carnival Cruise Lines, and I got to be a DJ out on the ocean. I was like a professional pirate, and got to perform for people, for thousands of people every 4 or 5 days on cruise lines. And then I got to go work at the theme parks here in Orlando. Life was good. I was making families and kids laugh, and for whatever reason, I thought that wasn't good enough, which is really hard. Really upset that I allowed myself to convince myself that what I was doing was not good enough. That okay, I've had enough fun, had enough joy. Now I need to get a real serious job and lock myself in an office and make a lot of money, And I did that for a couple of years, and I started to feel really unfulfilled. It started to take a toll on, I think, just on my personality. And I started asking, why did I die? Why did I get to come back? What's my purpose? Like, what do you want from me? I would quite literally look up and like kind of shout at the sky, which luckily I would do it alone because people would probably think I was crazy if I'm just like, shouting at the ceiling. But I really started to question it. I went to church and I asked the priest, I had this near-death experience. I met Jesus and I feel lost. And he kind of said, I wouldn't tell anybody that, and really made me feel self-conscious. Like I was like, oh, I thought he was going to help me and I thought he was going to give me all the answers and he didn't. So I felt really discouraged. And it was right around COVID time. So 2020, I know we don't like bringing that up, of course, a terrible time in our humanity, but right around COVID time, I got offered to go on a veterans mental health retreat. And it was a 5-day retreat that I tried to talk myself out of. No, I don't need it. I don't want to take somebody else's spot. And the Wounded Warrior Project said, no, you're coming, And it was an awesome retreat. We focused on breath work and yoga and meditation and just holistic ways to take care of yourself. And so you can go back home to your family and hopefully live a little bit of a happier, healthier life. And it was incredible. I bought into the 5-day process. I turned my phone off. I disappeared. And when I came back, there was a 5-day period where I had turned on the open sign, my spiritual open sign, and I didn't know how to turn it off. Spiritual gifts just got really, really enhanced when I came back from the retreat, to the point where I was being able to find out where missing people were, which was really bizarre for me because I thought, who am I, to know these things and why am I experiencing these things? How is this happening? But I was right about the people that were missing. And it started within like hours of people posting on Facebook of this girl that I knew from Virginia that went missing. I knew exactly where she was. I knew what happened to her. I felt her emotion, and it was really overwhelming for me and really bizarre. You know, I was like, how is this happening? I found out that I had a half sister that same night.
Oh.
I got a message from, I did a DNA test years earlier, and I got a message from her saying, I've been looking for you my whole life, you know, and I think we're brother sister. And it turns out we are, and we've met, you know, long story short, beautiful, you know, thing that happened. And then I got assigned like a therapist for 12 weeks as part of this mental health retreat. And she was asking all these questions. I'd never really met with a therapist before. I wasn't sure if I really believed in it at the time. And, you know, I tried to still be like a tough, you know, I'm a military guy, I don't need help. And she's asking me all these questions. And all of a sudden she stops and she said, can I ask you something? And I said, yeah. She said, did you have a near-death experience? And I broke down in tears. Nobody had ever used that term for me before. It wasn't a term that I knew. I thought, you know, if you like walk in front of a bus and then walk away and woof, you know, I just had a near-death experience, close call. I didn't know anything about it. So our session ended and I was crying, and I searched near-death experiences for veterans. And I immediately found the International Association of Near-Death Studies and this incredible woman named Diane Corcoran, who was a past president of IANDS and really set out her entire professional life to help veterans specifically who had near-death experience. She was a Vietnam nurse in the Army, you know, really just incredible person who did YouTube videos and military conferences and always spoke at the IANDS conference about military. And I was so filled with joy that I wasn't alone, and filled with tears that all these years had gone by, that I had pushed that beach ball down and finally was allowing it to spring up. And Diane changed my life. So I immediately joined that day. I joined IANDS, you know, I paid my membership dues, and there was a symposium. And so I thought, wow, this is great. I was supposed to be working that day from home, and don't tell my work, of course, but I was supposed to be working from home. And I joined the symposium, and I started listening to all these stories from people that, you know, speak at these conferences and online things. And I was blown away. It was years of feeling like ignorantly that I was all alone, right? Like I had this incredible experience, and I must be the only one. It was probably easier for me to think that at the time, you know. And then I joined the community, and I bought in, and I felt at home, and I felt at peace, and there was just so much to enjoy and experience, and it changed my life. And so I am indebted to IANDS and to Diane, who's now passed. And I have a lot of her items, her personal items, next to me that I always keep around me. I've got her prayer Bible and all these incredible things that IANDS donated me to hopefully carry on, you know, advocating for veterans. But yeah, I am so lucky to be here, and I'm so lucky that I get to share my story. And you know, the fear and judgment is gone thanks to organizations like IANDS and the conferences and the weekly talks and the podcasts that you do, Dani. And it's there's so many anonymous people that maybe aren't able to join these calls or join the conferences in person or online, but there's just so many people that are curious, that are experienced, and especially military people who can't come out and share their experience out of fear of judgment and losing their jobs and losing their clearance, that I get anonymous emails from, which is really cool, that people feel comfortable and you know, sharing some of their anonymous stories with me. It's really beautiful. And I thank people like you and IANDS for helping me, you know.
Thank you, Chase. Well, thank you so much for sharing this wonderful story. Quite an April Fool, I would say, right? Because it all happened.
Yeah, it's the best April Fools, right? I wake up every day April 1st and celebrate with a cake. My wife calls it the Happy You're Here Day. You know, it's like my new birthday really is the day that I woke back up. So we always celebrate with April Fools, and it's also terrible too because I go tell people this was the day I died, and they roll their eyes like, "Yeah, sure, April Fools." So
Yeah, exactly. That's the irony, I guess. That's brilliant. So
yeah,
I'd love to have so many questions. First of all, I'd be curious to know about your integration process, because I think there's this common misconception that people come out of an NDE and they're instantly transformed, whereas that's not the case. You know, it takes quite some time, according to PMH Atwater, on average about 7 years, for people to make sense of something which clearly we barely have the words to describe. So yeah, please tell me a little bit how your integration was like.
yeah, I think PMH Atwater is incredible, all the work that she does. And 7 years, it was really 12 years for me, I think, because it was 2008 that my near-death experience happened. And 2020 was really when I started feeling comfortable sharing it and really coming to terms with it. For me, those years, that transformation was really hard for me. Because again, I thought, this embarrassment and the shock and really trying to make sense of why me, why do I get to come back? And I would really kind of beat myself up of why did I get to deserve it? Why did I get to have this, what a lot of people consider either a Christian or at the very least, a very religious near-death experience, when I don't know before that if I was living the right type of holy life? I think there's a lot of judgment on myself of, was I praying enough? Or was I doing enough religiously or spiritually to deserve going to heaven? So a lot of shame there, and then a lot of questioning of, like I mentioned, what's my purpose? And if I don't have a purpose, then what's the sense of acknowledging what happened to me, right? Like I didn't ever see myself going into clergy or becoming a priest, or a deacon of a church, because I knew that wasn't my path. So I thought, well, why should I go through this big transformation and really acknowledge that I died and went to heaven if I'm not good enough, right? Yeah. If I didn't feel worthy enough to have that experience, which now, of course, now that I've been so open about my experience, I realize how foolish that is, that just being nice to a stranger at a grocery store is what we need in this world. And it's Absolutely. Not about doing these big, grand things. I used to think if it wasn't big enough, it wasn't worth it. And to me now, it's the opposite. It's the really small things that make the difference around us. It's the kindness and the joy. And so my transformation was really, it took so many years for me to make sense of it. And I think it was necessary. Maybe if I had found IANDS or, just the term near-death experience sooner, I might not have been ready. I might have never joined. I might have dismissed it as, yeah, it happened to me, but I don't believe anybody else. It might have just not been the right moment for me. And I think you, Dani, believe in, it's the right time for the right thing. And I believe that too. So my transformation was painful, was frustrating, but it was worth it. And although it took 12 years to really come to terms with it, I'm glad it did, because it got me here, and I love my life that I live now. So
that's great. Well, there's another little story that caught my attention in one of your podcasts. It was when during a flight, obviously you'll be able to tell him better than I do, I think you felt the presence of Jesus again. Would you mind telling us this? Yeah, please.
I call it number 2, right? My second, I had really never meditated until 2020. And I started meditating a lot. I meditate and pray. I think there's a big distinct difference between the two. I think praying is often you're talking, you're either showing gratitude or asking for healing for somebody, or, I thank God every night for my son, that I get to be a dad. And, so I pray throughout the day. But then I also think there's meditation is just silence and you allow things to come to you. And so in 2020, I really started to meditate, and I was really squinting, I would say, extra hard to meet Jesus again. And I realized that's not the point of meditation, is you don't just get to force things and get to meet who you want to meet. And it wasn't the right time. But I was on a flight, and I joked that I must have just been a little bit closer to heaven in the plane, for me to be able to communicate. But it was just silent. I wasn't watching any TV shows. The plane was really almost eerily quiet that for that flight. You couldn't see anybody getting up. There was no babies, nothing. And I just felt this huge presence, kind of like boom, like my body almost felt like it was wrapped in a hug. and I knew immediately that Jesus was with me. And I had not experienced that since 2008. And I had certainly not experienced it on the, I would say, in my human body. I hadn't experienced him, but I knew immediately that he was there and that I was able to communicate with him. And it was such like a fun conversation that I would have with a friend, or a sibling. You know, it was just very casual, and people get mad at that, and they're like, "How could you not ask him all these questions?" It was like just this really casual exchange of that I was doing the right thing, that I had, I think I had questioned for the last couple of years, am I as gifted? Is it all in my head? Which I think is healthy to be a little, I still feel like it's healthy for me to be skeptical and question.
Absolutely.
I had a friend once ask me like, hey, what if you woke up tomorrow and all of it was gone? And I'm like, I love that question because I think of it every day. So I don't take any of these gifts for granted. I don't take anything, my experience, for granted. So I was like exchanging with him and kind of laughing, and I was like, so I'm doing the right thing. And yeah, you know, it was fun. Like, he was funny. And you know, you have to remember he was a guy like, you know, he's a human. He was a guy just like the rest of us that like to joke around and have real conversations with people. And at that time I had realized that I had this really beautiful gift that I couldn't make sense of being able to heal with my hands. And my hands, I was able to put my hands on people and typically take away a little of their pain. It's not something that I like offer like a service. It's just this incredible thing that I do in the moment. And I was having my son, and I wanted to know, you know, can I fix my son? If he hits his head or he breaks his arm, and am I able to use my gift and on anybody? You know, I would walk around at a theme park, you know, living here in Orlando, and I would see people limping, and I would see people suffering, people in pain. I would get a sense that some people were struggling with addictions, and I wanted to fix everybody. But as I fix people, maybe because I don't know exactly how to do it, you know, there's really not a lot of people to train you how to do this. I would also take on that pain. So if somebody was struggling in their legs, I would feel pain in my legs. If somebody's you know, was dealing with diabetes, I would take that on. If somebody had heart issues, I would feel my heartbeat really painfully and get sweaty and feel like I was going to faint. So I was really felt like I was kind of running around trying to help everybody, and I was really destroying myself. It was tough. So I digress. During this conversation, I asked, you know, and he said, you have to stop taking everybody's pain, which was really tough for me. Because I'm like, why have this gift and not be able to use it, right? So that's hard. You know, you have this incredible thing, this inexplainable thing, and he said you have to let people live their human experience. And that was really, it was tough for me. It was important for him to say, because I had friends. I don't know if you've gotten to interview yet Michelle Claire, who goes to IANDS and is incredible 3-time near-death experiencer and amazing medium. She said the same thing beforehand. My wife had said, you got to stop taking people's pain. You know, you're hurting yourself. You're physically unable to get out of bed some mornings. So I'm glad that he said that. And then we ended the conversation in a joking way. And I said, well, how do you feel about the cross? You know, everybody remembers you, and your symbol of, you know, Christianity is the cross, which is really your worst day. It's the day that, you know, if people remember you of how you died. And he said, I'd rather be remembered as a son. And he meant like S-U-N, like the sun in the sky. And I thought, wow, okay, like you want to be remembered as the sun. And he said, because even when you don't see me at night, I'm always there. And I give, you know, plants, and I give flowers and the water. Everybody is reliant on me, whether you can see me or not. And I thought, whoa, like that was like you know, for me, my mind was blown. I was like, wow, okay, he wants to be remembered as the sun. And that was it. And then that like booming, like heavy feeling of him being around was just gone. And I sat there with this giant grin on my face. And I hope nobody on the plane, you know, looked over at me while I'm just like ear to ear grinning. Like oh my gosh, you know, I just had this incredible conversation at the right time again. And luckily this time I didn't have to die to have this beautiful conversation. And so we landed, and then I started to tell all the people I trust. I just had this conversation, and everybody was blown away. And they're like, "We told you so. We told you not to take other people's pain." And it was exactly the conversation I needed at that time. And then that's kind of where the chase the light. Of course, my name is Chase, so there's a play on words, but it really started to make sense because I thought, well, how do I call what do I call this thing that I'm experiencing or trying to relay to people? And I'm like, chase the light. It makes sense. So that was the only two times. That was the second conversation I've gotten to have with Jesus, and I haven't had one since, and I'm okay with that. I've learned that if you try to force it, and if you pray really hard, it just doesn't work that way. We get messages every day around us, and I've become so open to that. And I love questioning, is that just a coincidence? A friend of mine reached out. She unfortunately lost her mother. And I'm like, well, cardinals is your thing. And now whenever I see a red cardinal, which is not necessarily common where I'm at, I'm like, it's her. Like, she's reaching out to you, and keep looking for cardinals. Like, there's these beautiful coincidences that aren't coincidences, in my opinion, that are every day around us. We get messages every day, whether you feel like you are spiritually gifted. I believe everybody is open to receiving messages if you open your eyes. I spent so much time looking upwards and questioning whoever is in heaven, whoever can help me. What is my purpose? What is my goal? Am I doing everything right? Am I making you proud? And I realize it's all right here in front of me. It's if I turn around and I look on the floor every once in a while, and I look at animals, and I look at trees and flowers and nature. It's all right here. All the messages I need are easily available. And sometimes it takes us dying, unfortunately, to get those messages. And I'm hoping for my sake, of course, that I can just get the messages without something so dramatic next time.
Wow, that's brilliant. So I think you raised a very valid point. So if you don't mind, I'd love to take a couple of steps back because I'm curious to know, where do you draw the line? Because I myself can be someone that always wants to try and help everyone, and over time I also realize that sometimes us helping people is not the best thing that we can do to them, because maybe there are some lessons that they can only learn through certain experiences. So how do you reconcile that? Like, when do you know when you can interfere and when it's better to let go?
That is the $1 million question, Danny. It's something I'm still learning, right? I still struggle with that every day. When to intervene, if I should intervene. But what I have found with my personality type, I should say, because it's not like I don't. My gifts aren't like something that I offer as a service, right? It's not. I don't. I have a career outside of my spiritual kind of world that I feel like I'm able to, and backed by science, which I will mention, because I know that you have a scientific mind like me. I believed in praying for people, and there's actual science that people can look up if they roll their eyes while they're watching this, of praying for people. There's really prestigious colleges that have done studies on whether people know that you're praying for them or not, that they can heal faster. So I often feel like, at the very least, that's effortless for me to say, to kind of put my hands out or just close my eyes, even in that moment, and pray for them and hope them well and slightly less suffering. I know that I don't have the ability to cure everybody from cancer, which is, one of the most awful things in the world. I know I don't have the ability to change people's habits, because we live in a world of free will. If somebody is suffering from addiction or has really bad health habits, I can't change that for them. All I could pray is that they start to receive the messages that they need and the guidance, and become a little bit more clear for them. So I feel like those are the bare minimums that I'm able to offer somebody are those things. And then with my personality type, as I receive messages that I'm incredibly grateful to receive, when I do, I don't get them all the time. I still try to be a normal dad to my toddler. He's 2.5 years old, so I don't want to be out in public and get a ton of messages while I'm taking him to the zoo. But when I do get them, they're always really beautiful and positive. And so, for an example, went to a baseball game here, and I saw a mom with 2 teenage sons, and she was having a tough time. The kids were having a tough time, but they were good kids. And I immediately knew that she had lost her husband. And I 100% certainty, right? Like you could, at a certain point when guessing becomes accurate 100% of the time, it's not guessing anymore. But I didn't feel like that was the right moment to go approach her and go, oh, I'm so sorry, your husband, Pat, because she just wants to enjoy the baseball game with her two kids. You know, it's not my place to go in and intervene and mess up her day. So what I do instead is just when I get a chance to go, gosh, your kids are so well behaved. You know, how do you do it? You know, I'm a dad too. Like, how do you? And I just try to brighten her day a little bit enough for her to then hopefully take that home and remember that at night and feel the presence of her husband herself. I went to a farmer's market and this gentleman was selling, he was homemade garlic grater. My wife kind of rolls her eyes sometimes because she immediately knows when I'm getting some sort of message. And she's like, "Oh, you know, what are we about to buy to support this stranger?" Yeah, because when we go to farmers markets, it's really bad because we end up buying so many things we don't need just to support people from the messages I get. So I really need to make a little bit more money for that sake, you know. But we just walked up and he starts demoing and showing, "Hey, this is how it works." And I said, "I'll take two of them." I kind of cut him off, you know, and was like, "I'll take two." And he's like, "Oh, all right." And so we walked away and I felt guilty that I didn't share a message with him. You know, I thought, okay, I'm supporting his, his effort. And so we turned back around and I said, "Hey," I said, "I know you're doing this for a really specific reason and your parents are so proud of you." And he turns his head to the side. He's a big guy. You know, you wouldn't, just from judging him, right? You wouldn't expect him to be receptive to this, you know, big, tough guy. And his eyes just started pouring with tears immediately. And part of me feels good because I'm like, hey, I got it right. You know, like I'm not guessing. This is a real intuition that I get. And that's all I said. And I said, you know, they're proud of you. And I walked away. And that's all he needed in that moment. So for me, that fits my personality, to just go around and share that kindness with people without giving them a direct message of what they need to hear, or, you know, telling you, "Hey, I know that you've lost this and I know you're grieving," because that brings up more emotion than I'm willing to participate in, I guess, for somebody. It's just a nice way to touch people, you know?
Yeah. Well done. Hats off to you. So I'd be curious to know, what's the biggest lesson that you learned from your NDE?
Gosh, the biggest lesson is that we are surrounded by love at all times, whether we feel it or not. Life is hard. Life is not supposed to be easy. We all know that. All of us right now in our lives have something troubling us, whether it's maybe insignificant to somebody else. It means the world to us of something we're suffering for. So I never judge people based off of, well, they're suffering more than this person. It's not fair to compare who's suffering more. That's so unimportant. So that's the biggest lesson, is that love surrounds us and we are capable of being loved, everybody, and we're capable of giving love, and it can happen simultaneously. You can open the door for a stranger and show kindness, and then you should allow the door to be opened for you by another stranger because they need to give love too. So it's that life lesson of, you could be a teacher and a student simultaneously, or you could go out and spend your entire day awake as a teacher, but allow yourself the next day to be a student. Allow yourself to be loved. Allow yourself to give love. Another important one for me, which maybe isn't the most important, I know you asked the most important, is since my near-death experience, I've removed jealousy from my life, which was a big thing, I think, especially when I was young, was trying to compare myself to others. Am I making as much money as this person? Is my car as nice as this person? Mm-hmm. Is my house when I get older going to be as nice as them? That is not relevant to me at all. I never compare myself to others anymore, which is very freeing. I think I try to look back and remember how I was back then. It's just not how we're supposed to live our lives. For some people, they say, well, that's easier said than done to just remove jealousy. But when you realize that you are an individual, you are a thumbprint that is unique, and you're not supposed to live the life of somebody else you're comparing yourself to, life gets a little bit unburdened. And I think that's important to mention too.
Absolutely. No, no, well said, because I think it's a very easy trap to fall into.
Yeah,
Nice.
and people feel like what they do for a living isn't enough. I think as long as you're happy or satisfied, it's enough. It doesn't matter if you work at a bank, you work at a fast food restaurant. It doesn't matter as long as you're treating people well. You don't have to feel like you're not doing enough for humanity of the world. It's just kindness. Is what's important. I get asked all the time, I'm not doing enough, my career, I'm so, and I'm like, well, find a career that you're happy with, of course. Find something that makes you happy when you wake up, but it's not what you're doing, it's how you do it.
Yeah.
So it goes along with what you said. I think it's important that people don't judge themselves and just allow them to share kindness however they do it throughout their day.
And we learn from near-death experiences that we are the judges of ourselves, that God doesn't judge. God loves us exactly for who we are. So all this comparison, all this judgments, it's all self-imposed. So we are the makers of our own, sufferings. And it's, as I said, easier said than done, but it's a practice. And I've certainly seen a lot of improvements in my life as a non-experiencer. I think a lot of experiences, perhaps they had a little extra gear, a little extra hint, but I'm certain that everyone can get there. So I'm very hopeful. That's great.
That's exactly right. Yeah, no judgment, and it sounds cliche, but when we die, we don't take our things with us. We take our soul. So go to bed every night proud of yourself that you made it through another tough day. And that's what's important. Don't worry about the material things. Don't worry about what you're leaving behind, your legacy. It's more important about how you feel about yourself every day. And so don't be so hard on yourself.
Absolutely.
Allow yourself grace.
Yeah, I mean, one of the common after effects is exactly that in the years they tend to lose the importance of the material things. Because I think you probably read Yogananda Paramahansa, the autobiography of a yogi. And I can't remember if it was one of the first pages, I will never forget. He says something on the lines of, we come here on this earth without a penny and we leave this earth without a penny. So you can spend the rest of your life, accumulating gold and wealth, and you're just leaving everything behind. So enjoy your life, He, as you said, to have a laugh, to have the experience, to have fun. Although, yeah, obviously not so easy. That's great. Another question for you. What do you think people who have not had a near-death experience can do to start to come to terms with the notion of an afterlife?
Yeah, I think afterlife, it's important where you are in your journey, right? Like my story often gets pushed towards, he met Jesus, it's Christianity, it's a Christian story. My story was not, even though obviously I am born Catholic, raised Catholic, right? Christian and met Jesus. My story was not about Christianity, right? My story was watching myself as a little boy be free and happy. So the evidence of the afterlife, which is actually what my doctorate dissertation is the commonalities of all religions. Oftentimes religions that people don't see any similarities in is what the afterlife looks like, and ultimately everybody agrees that there is some form of afterlife, right? And so if you're not religious and you're watching this, but you're just curious, I would say that's okay, right? Like my job is not to force you to believe in afterlife, but just know that heaven is for real, which I know is a saying, right? That there is an afterlife, and you don't have to do all these important things to get there, right? You don't have to be so hard on yourself like you're not doing enough to get to your afterlife. Just make the best of your life now. My near-death experience, like a lot of experiences, they aren't afraid of death anymore, right? Which I would say, when people ask me, "Are you afraid of dying?" I'm not afraid of dying because I know that I will always be around. I joke with my wife. I'm like, if I go first, I'm going to mess with you all the time. I'm going to, she's like, please don't, my only fear of dying is that I'm not able to teach my son, who's incredibly gifted already at his age. I just want to make sure he has the tools to know that I'm always around. So part of me always feels a little bit guilty when I'm talking to grieving people, whether they've lost a parent or they've lost a loved one or a child. And I'm so confident that there's an afterlife and that they are so free to get messages. I understand we all selfishly want to feel somebody's hug. We want to be able to call them on the phone and hear their voice. But that doesn't mean that they're not around constantly. And so because I have proof of that, and because I know for sure that loved ones are constantly surrounding us and giving us messages, sometimes I can be a little bit harsh where I'm like, it's okay. Like, don't worry about it. They're here. They're right there. It's, they're with you. But it's that selfish part of our humanness is like, when you lose a grandparent, it's really hard because you can't drive to their house and taste their cooking. But I would say take advantage of the tools, which, like you mentioned, it takes practice. It takes prayer, it takes meditation, and it takes just opening your eyes a little bit more than maybe you are to get those messages, but they are around. Now, I will say that if you say, Grandma, if you're really here, leave a penny in front of my front door tomorrow. Don't count on the penny being there, right? You're putting your grandmother in a really tough spot to let you down. And then now you're sad. And in saying that, the last thing that any message I've ever gotten is that they don't want our human selves to grieve, right? They don't want you to wake up every day sad that you've lost grandma. I'm using a grandma as an example in this case, but they don't want you to wake up every day and cry that grandma's no longer there. That's the last thing they want. They know you love them. And so people go, well, if I don't do this, then I don't want my grandma to think I'm not thinking of her. And I'm like, she knows, grandma knows. And she's very aware. She wants you to go out and be happy and live your life. If you've lost a spouse, move on if you're ready to. They're not going to sit there and be angry at you. Everybody in heaven wants everybody down here to be happy. And so go through your process, grieve if you need to, but do that for yourself. And allow yourself to be happy when you're ready to be happy, because in heaven they don't want to see you sad about anything. So I hope that answers your question, Danny. I kind of digressed a little bit.
No, it really does. Thank you so much. So obviously, I do need to ask you, what's your idea of God these days?
God is the most beautiful, loving presence that all of us have access to. He is the creator of our world. So if you are absolutely allowed to believe in God and science, in my opinion, I believe that they're the exact same thing. I am a scientific minded person. I love reading the science behind prayer healing and Reiki and what meditation does scientifically. There is a conjoining of that. And the cool thing is now with AI, if you like using AI, you can ask AI, how does prayer and science combine? And it'll give you scientific evidence of schools and different people doing this incredible evidence. So my opinion of God is this loving and mighty force and presence that we all have access to. I believe that God is within all of us, because if God created all of us and science, that he is within us. He's in the water we drink. He's in the air that we breathe. So don't think that you're insignificant is really what I think God is. And God doesn't want us to think that we're insignificant. Suffering is part of the human experience, and people way smarter than me can explain to you why God makes us suffer. I think that there's plenty of people that can answer that. But my answer is if you are suffering, figure out why you're suffering. If you are sad that you've lost a loved one, make a good change for that. I know somebody who's lost a loved one because of a drunk driver. And I'm like, okay, grieve, handle that human emotion as much as you can. I'm not telling you to forget about your loved one, but what can you do? Can you advocate for people to stop drinking and driving? Can you do something in their honor to make it worth it? If somebody dies and we don't honor them and make it worth it, then maybe there was no point, right? So that's on us, though, to live on and carry on. And I lost my great grandfather, and he was in the Navy, and I thought I'd make him proud if I joined the military. And he loved baseball, and so when I watch baseball and I look at statistics, it reminds me of him. So I'm doing something in his honor. I'm remembering him the way that he wanted me, obviously, to remember him. So I think God is within all of us. We have access. All of us have access to God. And if you don't believe in God, that's okay. That's just part of your journey that you're on. And it's not my job to convince you that there is a God. I'm just confident that there is one. Yeah.
So why do you think God made us?
God made us, in my opinion, so we can come down and leave the world better than we've left it. I believe that it's a constant test. I believe that we're essentially in school right now to show that we are capable of leaving the world better than we left it. And when we watch politics and we watch the world and we zoom in and focus on all these bad things, we don't zoom out and realize how much we've progressed, how much, at least, in the United States, where we came from 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, the progression of it's easy to focus on the negative and not realize how much beautiful is around us. How much being kind to somebody that walks across, my front house and I can wave at them and say hi to them, and how connected we've all become. We think about the negative side of social media, right? They think of the evil side of it, but how beautiful it is now. Before trains and automobiles, Dani, you and I would never have a chance of ever meeting. Yeah. You being in Europe and Italy and or London, wherever you've been, it would not be possible. Like, you could travel a couple of feet or miles without hopefully getting sick or dying, or, so we think of all these advancements of becoming more connected. Without cell phones, without the internet, we would not be as connected as we are. I think it's just important what we do with that connection.
Absolutely.
Humans are pack animals, like dogs. We're not supposed to be alone. We're supposed to be in packs. We're supposed to be with people. For veterans like myself, isolation is deadly. Locking yourself in your room and not having human interaction is not healthy. And our youth is growing up connected to their phones, talking to people you could be in Florida and make friends with somebody playing a video game in Japan, but I think you still need that human interaction where you live. So come together, go to conferences, go to spiritual things. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing, go to the library and just sit next to somebody who's also reading a book. I think leaving the world better than how we left it is the reason why we're here. And I think it's the ultimate test of, are we each capable of making small advancements over time?
Yeah, I love that. Chase, I have one last question for you. What's the meaning of life?
The meaning of life is chasing the light. That is, the meaning of life is to find joy and happiness and find your personal light. It doesn't matter what your light is. If you can close your eyes after this interview and really think for just a couple of minutes, what is your light? What makes you happy? For me personally, right now, it's being a dad. I've wanted to be a dad my entire life. I remember writing in school when I was really little, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be a dad, which to me is the most important profession. There's plenty of people, incredible people, that don't want to be parents, and that's okay, but they have to find their light. So what is your light? Is it giving back to others? Is it, for me, being a father and getting to raise my son and give him a better life than I ever could have imagined? Is it taking care of a cat? Is it, showing your cat kindness, taking care of your cat every day? When you have a bad day at work, coming home, letting your cat on your lap, petting your cat, showing your cat love. What's your light? That to me is the meaning of life. We're all supposed to have a different meaning, in my opinion. If we were all alike and we all had the same thought, I think the world would be terrifying.
It'd be so boring as well, right?
Without, yeah, exactly. Without contrast, without differing opinions, I think the world would be scary and boring. So I think the meaning of life is finding your personal light. And if you want to spend 90 years finding your light and you haven't figured it out yet, keep going. Because when you find it, you're going to be so happy. And it's not too late to find your light. I love reading stories of somebody who's 87 who just graduated with their first degree in something. And, I'm like, that is incredible. Like I fill up with joy and tears sometimes, because I'm like, it took them 87 years to find something that they were going to be really proud of. And I think it's great. So don't stop chasing your light. Don't stop trying to find your light. And once you do find your light, embrace it.
Thank you so much, Chase. It's been a wonderful conversation. I think you unpacked a lot of pearls of wisdom. So keep spreading the light. Wishing you all the best, and bye for now.
And thank you, Dani. Thank you for everything you do on this podcast and research. You're incredible. And I know it's hard work and it doesn't go unnoticed. You're making a huge difference.
Thank you. It means a lot coming from you. All the best for now. Likewise.
Thank you.
Oh, hi there. Well, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the IANDS community, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and maybe share with the ones you love. If you're looking for another video to watch, I think this could be a very good one. New episodes out every Friday, and until then, enjoy the stream we all call live and live the love you wish to see in the world. Bye for now.